You wake up when the light hits your eyelids, not when a piece of plastic on your nightstand screams at you. There is no morning commute, no unread emails, no performance reviews. You step outside into a world where everything you see, from the horizon to the dirt beneath your toes, belongs to everyone and no one at the same time. The air smells like damp earth, crushed pine needles, and the faint, sweet residue of wood smoke from last night's fire. Your only schedule is the transit of the sun. Your only boss is the biology of your own hunger. For 99% of human history, this wasn't a vacation. It was just Tuesday. We have been conditioned to believe that before the invention of agriculture, cities, and the 9-to-5 desk job, human life was a desperate, miserable horror show. We picture our ancestors running from predators, starving in caves, and working themselves to the bone just to survive another night. But history hides a beautiful, frustrating secret. The people who lived before jobs existed weren't miserable. In fact, by almost every modern metric, they were freer than you will ever be. We assume that progress is a straight line going up. We think that because we have smartphones and antibiotics, our daily lives must be fundamentally better and less exhausting than those of the past. But anthropologists are discovering that we have the story completely backwards. In 1964, a Canadian anthropologist named Richard Lee trekked into the northern Kalahari Desert. He went to study the hoansi, a group of hunter-gatherers who still lived precisely the way our ancestors did 40,000 years ago. Lee expected to find a people consumed by the brutal, exhausting struggle for survival. He brought notebooks, scales, and stopwatches, prepared to log the grueling hours they spent desperately searching for food in a barren wasteland. What he found shook the foundation of modern economics. The hoansi did not struggle. They cruised. Lee meticulously tracked their days and discovered that an adult hunter-gatherer only needed to work about 15 hours a week to satisfy all their caloric and material needs. That is just over 2 hours a day. The rest of their time was spent entirely on leisure, storytelling, making music, and playing with their children. They had no concepts of weekends because their entire life was a weekend. Now, some of you are thinking, sure, but they were probably starving and malnourished. A 15-hour work week doesn't matter if you're dying of hunger. Fair question, but Lee weighed the food they gathered. He tracked their health. Even during a severe regional drought, an average hoansi adult consumed over 2,300 calories a day, packed with proteins, vitamins, and minerals that put the average modern diet to absolute shame. They weren't starving, they were thriving. Anthropologist Marshall Salins looked at this data and coined a phrase that reverses everything we think we know about human advancement. He called hunter-gatherers the original affluent society. Affluence, Salins realized, isn't about having a lot of things. It is about wanting very little and having the absolute freedom to spend your days exactly how you choose. Let's look at how that freedom actually tasted. Imagine a typical day 90,000 years ago, long before the first seed was ever planted. The morning begins slowly. The camp stirs around 8 or 9 o'clock. There is no rush to beat rush hour. Adults sit around the embers of the previous night's fire, roasting mongungo nuts and laughing. They talk about their dreams. They tease each other. If someone doesn't feel like working that day, they simply don't. No one writes them up. No one docks their pay. Around mid-morning, a small group decides it is time to gather food. They don't pack briefcases, they grab woven baskets and lightweight bows. The walk into the wilderness is social. It is a stroll through a landscape they know as intimately as you know the layout of your own home. They know which vines hold water, which tracks are fresh, and which plants can heal an upset stomach. By early afternoon, the work is already done. The group returns to camp with roots, berries, and perhaps a small antelope. The bounty does not go into a private refrigerator locked away from the neighbors. It is pooled together. In a world without refrigeration, hoarding food is a form of social madness. Wealth is accumulated not by keeping things, but by giving them away. Your security doesn't come from a savings account. It comes from the bonds of the people who eat beside you. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in deep gradients of purple and orange, this is the real business of the day. This is the time for ritual, for art, and for connection. The elders sit with the children, passing down stories that are thousands of years old. Someone begins to beat a rhythm on a hollowed log. Women start to sing, their voices rising into the cool night air. People dance, they argue, they make up. They stare up at a night sky completely unpolluted by artificial light, watching the dense silver ribbon of the Milky Way arc from one horizon to the other. There is no anxiety about tomorrow's presentation, no dread about paying the bills. When they grow tired, they simply lie down together under the stars and fall asleep. So what happened? How did we get from a 15-hour workweek under the stars to a 40-hour workweek under fluorescent mites? The trap sprung roughly 12,000 years ago. It arrived in the form of a tiny, unassuming blade of grass called wheat. Historians used to frame the agricultural revolution as humanity's greatest triumph. We supposedly grew tired of wandering, settled down, and mastered nature. But the reality is far tragicer. Think of it as a Faustian bargain we didn't know we were signing. When humans began farming, our workloads didn't decrease, they exploded. Wheat is a demanding, fragile master. It requires clearing fields, pulling weeds, digging irrigation ditches, and building fences to protect it from animals. Our ancestors' bodies, built for the varied, fluid movements of walking and climbing, were suddenly subjected to hours of repetitive, back-breaking labor. Anthropologists looking at early agricultural skeletons find a sudden spike in slipped discs, arthritis, and repetitive strain injuries. But the physical toll was nothing compared to the psychological trap. Farming forced humans to live in one place, which led to permanent settlements. Permanent settlements led to the concept of private property. Once you have property, you have to defend it. Suddenly, you need hierarchies, you need armies, you need rulers to manage the grain storehouses. For the first time in human history, a small elite realized they could force everyone else to work all day harvesting food they wouldn't even get to keep. The concept of the job was born. We traded the boundless freedom of the forest for the security of a cage. Look at your hand right now. The skin, the bones, the neurological pathways firing in your brain. They are identical to the humans who danced around those fires 90,000 years ago. Your body is still wired for the rhythm of the sun, the open horizon, and the deep safety of a tight-knit tribe. Yet tomorrow morning, you will wake up to an alarm. You will sit in traffic or crowd onto a train, staring at a screen filled with symbols that mean nothing to nature. You will spend 8, 10, maybe 12 hours performing tasks designed to optimize someone else's profit margins. You buy groceries wrapped in plastic that you paid for with tokens earned by sacrificing your own daylight.